I'm tryna give me a bag. I'm tryna give me a bag. I'm tryna give me a bag. I'm tryna give me a bag.
What's up? You are now listening to FYI FLI, the podcast, and I'm your host, Hassan Thomas, along with Remy, and we are here to share tools on how millennials can budget, save, invest, and understand student debt and credit to achieve financial freedom. If you're a high school student, college student, or someone who's interested in gaining more financial insight, this podcast is for you.
I'm tryna give me a bag. I'm tryna give me a bag. I'm tryna give me a bag. I'm tryna.
What's up, my FYI FLI folks out there? How y'all doing? I hope y'all doing all right. Welcome to the FYI FLI podcast. My name is Hassan Thomas, aka the kid that did and the man that can, baby. And today, we're gonna be chopping it up with Mr. Brandon, who is the founder of the well-known brand Work-Life Balance. He went from being a welfare kid to a multi-millionaire father and husband. So we had to bring him on the show. How you doing, boss man? How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Blessed and highly favored, man. Happy to be here.
Yes, sir, man. Well, to be honest with you, here at FYI FLI, we like to skip the fluff and get right into the good stuff, man.
Sounds good.
So it's official. You know, we are now in a recession, and you know, when you don't have a plan for these hard times, you're gonna take an L. Like, that's just what it is. So that's why we really wanted to bring you on the show to give us some tips and tricks on not only how to stay afloat, but to thrive during this season that we're in. So let's go ahead and get into it. Like, what does a recession actually mean, and how does it affect our money? That's what we really want to know.
Yeah, the odd thing about the technical textbook definition of recession, you need to have contraction of the economy for 2 consecutive quarters. So usually by the time the government officially marks a recession, you're already in it or it's already over. You're going to feel the effects of that well before the government officially declares it a recession. You're going to know by unemployment increasing. You're going to know by you're tightening your own pocketbook. You know, that trip to Tulum maybe it's just a trip to, you know, Houston now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You start to make these decisions with your pocket, knowing that, okay, things might be a little rough. You know, maybe you're not going to, you know, STK. Maybe you're going to, you know, the regular steak place, you know, Red Lobster or something, right? Nothing against Red Lobster.
Go to Chili's, man.
You
2
know,
for 20, man.
Yeah, you might be at Chili's. But so you start to make those decisions. So a lot of it, man, is there's a saying, you know, be ready so you don't have to get ready, right?
Fact.
And so unfortunately, recessions aren't new. You know, they're fairly common. And we all can kind of see them coming. You don't know when, right? So when times are good, there has to be a time where that reverses course, right? So always thinking ahead in terms of what you can do ahead of time so that you're not doing emergency planning in the middle of an emergency, but you've already got that emergency plan lined up so you don't have to really do an emergency reaction.
100%. So what are some of the emergency preparations that you put in place or have been putting in place for times like this?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of simple and basic things that everybody could and should be doing, right? So emergency funds. One thing that is basically common with every recession is an increase in the unemployment rate, right? So in 08, 09, unemployment was probably around 10% plus, right? So one hand, 90% of people didn't lose their jobs, right? But 10% is a large number of people unemployed. So think about what your expenses are, right? How much do you spend monthly? Break that up between needs and then the wants. So STK, that goes in the wants category. Food goes in the needs, but your food might be, I need eggs, I need milk, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I need some fruit. I can get by with some Campbell's soup, you know, if I need to. Like what do you really need in order to get by? Mortgage, rent, your auto payments, any debt payments, add all that stuff up, you know? Ideally, you want to have, people will say 3 months. I'm conservative. I think you need to have more like 6 to 12 months. Again, that gives you more cushion.
This recession done showed us. I mean, COVID pandemic.
Recession shows you, man. You saw, you know, when the pandemic hit, when the paychecks started getting cut within a week, you know, there were lines wrapped around the block at food pantries, right? And so it happens, right? So how do you be prepared so that in 1 week, you know, you're not living check to check, and so you're in the food bank line within a week, right? So take those steps now. Start to look at, okay, maybe it isn't Tulum, right? Do I really need to do that now? Another thing to kind of look at is what industry do you work in, right? Assuming you work, right? That you're self-employed. If you're in an industry that is kind of, people don't need that service. It's like, you know, vacations, right? So the pandemic, people didn't need to go on vacation, right? So that got cut. Think about what you do if you're in nursing or medical. It's probably something that's kind of recession proof because people are still going to get sick, right? But if you're in an industry like finance where interest rates are going up, you know, mortgage rates are at 6% plus. Not many people buying houses, right? Maybe the bank is starting to trim expenses and do unemployment. So think of what you do and how sort of correlated you may be with the recession, because that's going to tell you if I need to be, 3 months or if I need to be closer to 12 months on how much money I need to have set aside.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Because, and that's why I really wanted to have you on, because I don't want people waiting until these moments strike, because, I feel that people sometimes do have to go through, a little bump on the head to really learn, but I wanted to be the smallest or slightest bump possible. You know what I'm saying? I don't want them to get spanked over that joint. You know what I mean? So that's why I really wanted to have you on here, man. So I want to get into I want to compare this recession to the recession of 2008, because for the middle school and high schoolers, even for me, I was 10. In 2008. So I don't remember too much. So can you compare the difference, with this recession?
Yeah, I mean, in going back to that recession, I remember because I had just moved to DC at the time. So back then what was happening was the banks had loose lending standards where they had all these basically financial products where you could do no money down or very little down, and they would just give you the whole thing, right? Or you could do multiple loans on the house in order to get there. So all that stuff blew up because, your uncle might have had 3 homes and he's speculating that all of them are going to go up in value. So, nothing to lose. So what happened is it hit the fan, right?
I'm starting to pick it up.
You might have been paying interest only, but then all of a sudden that interest period ended. And now you owe all this principal on 3 properties. And you don't have enough money to pay for all that, right? And so now there's not enough people buying the houses, and so the prices go down and you're foreclosed. And so it was a whole spin out of housing was the driver of that recession, right? This one is a little different because we're all in a little bit of a better position financially. So there's always going to be, top and bottom, but overall, we don't have as much debt that we had going into that recession, right? So if you got 3 mortgages, and you speculating on, I'm going to sell to the next fool for a higher price kind of thing, you have a high debt load because you carrying all this debt with you, expecting some greater fool to buy the house for more money than you paid for, right? So we don't really have that dynamic now. So, you'll see when you hear the Fed or different pundits say, the consumer's in a stronger financial position. That's what they're looking at. They're looking at debt to household income levels, right? So it's lower now.
Gotcha.
So that doesn't mean that you should feel good about, a potential recession, but that's why some of the economists are saying it shouldn't be as bad as 08, 09. But if you're the one who's unemployed, it doesn't matter if it's 08, 09, 1999, it's going to hurt you all the same if you haven't taken those steps,
regardless.
You know what I'm saying, in order to prepare for the storm when it's coming. So that's a little bit of a difference that may be there, but there are some other headwinds that are different now. So we have, you have global supply chain issues, right? So that's what's really one of the issues that's pumped up inflation is.
And that started during COVID,
right?
So
because factories shut down, like lumber. The factories had closed down, so they weren't pumping out as much lumber. So the price of lumber went skyrocketing because if you wanted a house, well, there's not enough lumber to go around. So you jack up the price, right? So all those dynamics are at play. You got Russia doing this whole gas pipeline thing over in Europe, shutting it off, maybe shutting it off longer. So there's these more geopolitical things that are drivers now than what were in place in 08, 09. So who knows how that plays out in this recession too. But at least for now, people think the recession will be more milder than 08, 09, but time will tell.
Yo, are you ready to hit your next level? Do you want to increase your drive, destiny, and dollars? Well, if so, check out my new book, From College to COVID, 24 Lessons Learned During the Lockdown, where I've compiled 5 of the biggest lessons I learned going from college to COVID to starting my financial literacy empire, FYI FLI. Plus, 19 lessons from your favorite entrepreneurs, entertainers, and athletes that have been featured on our show. There's literally something for everyone. So purchase your copy today at FYIFLI.com/from college to COVID. Let's go. So we're going to get back to the recession talk, but I can't let that slip. So how you talked about, getting your millions, just working a job and investing. So can you talk about because you don't hear that a lot from people that, look like us. Yeah, what I mean? It's always a football player or a basketball player. Or I hit it big with just one thing and I got lucky. You know what I'm saying? So let's talk a little bit about, your experience in doing that and some of the lifestyle choices you had to make sure that you reached, that millionaire status.
So I got my MBA in finance, but when I graduated, my first job was making about $35,000. Right. So
wow. After the MBA?
Yeah. No, this is before my MBA. I got my MBA
gotcha.
while I was working. But I graduated and I'm thinking, finance, I got to go work in New York, got to go get this money, something, right? Opportunities weren't really there. You need experience, but how do you get experience if you don't get experience kind of thing, right? So I took a job at a local bank doing like loans in a branch, right? Making $35K. I always invested some. So even with that 35,000, I'm like, okay, how do these benefits work? Y'all will match whatever, like 4% or whatever. Okay, let me put in like 4%. So even with this, I went to school for finance. Yeah. But the textbooks don't teach you about personal finance. They teach you how to do finance for a corporation. Yeah. Not for yourself, right? So a lot of that stuff I still had to learn on how to do all the stuff that we'll talk about in this call, but I was always consistent in contributing something to my future, right? Gotcha. So as I began transition to different jobs, grew my income, flipped into another company, grew my income. I just kept increasing how much I was investing consistently, right? So every paycheck, ramping it up, And so over time, the market goes up, it goes down, but over the long term, that thing's gone up. So that's how I've been able to build up, over $1 million in my own, self. And then since I met my wife, I helped her kind of organize her stuff as well. She's grown to almost over $1 million. So collectively, we're multimillionaires, 2 kids, living low key, living the dream, man.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing. Cause these are stories and that's why I'm so happy that I have this, we have this platform where we can hear so many different stories, positive stories that people can hear, because what Fred Taylor says, he says exposure leads to expansion. So by hearing you say that, that's going to make the 9-to-5 employee, the 9-to-5 worker feel so much better about themselves, because especially in the social media age, all we seeing is entrepreneur. Yeah. Oh, you work a 9-to-5. Like, people are really trying to, talk down on a 9-to-5. Like, come on now, that 9-to-5 is that slow for show money. It's for show money. But they don't talk about that entrepreneurship where you may get a check in January and may not get one until March or April.
Exactly. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with entrepreneurship, right? I mean, it's a key cog to our economy. I would say I've seen a lot of that narrative or perception as well, right? Fire your 9-to-5 and, start for yourself. I kind of say this: if we all had our own business, who's going to work in our businesses? Right.
That's a great point.
So everybody can't have their own thing, or else it's not going to work. Right. So there needs to be people who do the work. Every entrepreneur, when you want to scale your business, what do you need to do? You need to find employees.
Hire out, delegate.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a bit of a vicious cycle that if you would downplay a 9-to-5, whenever other people having a 9-to-5 for your company is what's going to help you thrive, right? So, but yeah, you're right, man. I mean, I've never traded an option. I got an MBA in finance, undergrad finance. I know about it, but it takes a lot of time, right?
It's a skill.
It's
that
a skill,
you have to
right?
learn. Facts.
And there's nothing wrong with it, but I look at things like a curve. In order to be successful with investing and getting, all you care about is, can my money make money? So to get most of the way there, you can do that through a bunch of simple ways, man, like index funds, investing consistently, and some other small little things that are super easy to learn. If you want to do the extra stuff like trading options and selling calls and all this stuff, like, there's nothing wrong with that. But you've already, like, you're just playing around with the tail end of that curve. You've already done the basic stuff and got most of the reward already. It's like, how much do you want to invest in this extra little thing at the end? So just stick to the basics, man, is my story. You don't need to do anything complex. You just need to be consistent and keep ramping up like your income and how much you invest in yourself. And that will, the numbers will play themselves out if you do that.
And you know what Warren Buffett said? He said he just steps over the small hurdles. He don't even try to jump over the big, large hurdles. He just said he just steps over the small ones.
Yeah, that's right, man. It's like in you talk about football, but one of the things in football is just the next play. Don't think about trying to score the touchdown, right? Don't think about trying to hit the home run. There's way more singles and doubles than there are home runs. So you're not going to win the game from home runs. You're going to win the game by hitting the singles and getting on base. Same thing in football. Get the first down, keep the chains moving. That's what's going to win you the game. You're not going to score a touchdown every play, right? So don't try to look for the touchdown plays every time when you haven't done the execution of the X's and O's that could have easily got you to the goal line. And now you just need to run it in 1 yard. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, I need y'all to make sure that y'all picking up on these analogies, because they really, really make sense, comparing it to how people are learning, how people are taking the time and the effort to learn trading, which is a skill, compared to just taking the smaller time or the smaller amount of time and just learning knowledge on how to invest for long-term generational wealth, as we're talking to right now. So I really hope y'all picking up on this conversation. And let's go ahead and jump back into the recession, man, because it seems like we really can't catch a break. We done had COVID the past 2 years. Now summer 2022, we in a recession, man. And I know a lot of people had them big plans for the summer. So how can we make sure that we're still living our life now while still protecting ourselves financially, in the future?
Yeah, and so it goes back to strong foundation, right? If you've already done stuff like, I got my emergency fund settled, right? I don't have a lot of debt, or I paid down my debt. Now you're in a space where, okay, you're not dependent on that next check to survive, right? So now you might be able to say, I can still do Tulum, right? Because I did the basic stuff, right? I did the X's and O's. I got the singles. Now, should something happen, layoff or whatever, I have some room to withstand that hit, So like, don't try to think, outside the box. Everything's been done before. Get your emergency fund ready. Watch what you spend, right? Know what you spend, right? Most people don't know, like, I don't know to the penny what I spend, but I keep a pulse on where my money is and how much I've spent, right? So at least pay attention to where it's going. So you know what? Something doesn't feel a little bit right, or let me just trim this down. So and about, my story and my testimony isn't about living frugal, right? My story is living below my means.
Okay.
But
what's the difference? What's the difference for you?
There's a difference because I focused on growing my income to the point that living on half of our income is still more than what most families make in a year or 2 years, right?
Got you.
So I'm able to live below my means. So while my neighbors might have a Maserati, a Corvette, a Benz, I have a Honda Pilot and a 09 BMW. Like, I'm cool with that. Nobody's following me in the parking lot home. You know what I'm saying? I'm cool. When the garage goes down, you can't tell who has more money in the neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? But I'm comfortable because I built this cushion that now I'm able to maybe retire a little bit earlier. I'm able to do what you're saying, still live well, but not flex on stuff that really doesn't matter. So I can still go to Thailand, or I'm about to go to Colombia, and it's like not a question because it's not going to my car note. It's not going to like things that don't mean a lot to me, right? So live your best life, but be mindful of what living your best life could do to you in the future, right? Don't live your best life and then end up in a recession and end up struggling and having a repo man coming to get all your stuff, right? Or having a yard sale with everything. So understand, like, you can still live well in the things that, we pay attention to in our consumer culture. Try to have not a consumer culture mindset, but have a capital culture mindset, because when you focus on building your capital, you can go live your best life and not worry about, you can still be a consumer and not worry about like, oh man, I can't make it this trip, or I can't make it up to dinner with you. So be mindful of what you're spending, man, and just live for now. You know, don't think I got to live frugally until I'm 65. Like you don't need to do that. But what are you doing to improve your situation? Like you can't be check to check and keep the status quo and still live your best life, because that's a recipe for debt in the food line in 1 week if that check doesn't come. Like, so be mindful and love yourself and respect yourself enough today and in the future that you don't want to get into those situations.
100%. And I was over here like, man, I literally just had this conversation about like longevity.
Yeah.
You know, especially me, I graduated 2 years ago. So I see, you know, the people that graduated before me, I see the people that graduated with me. You know, 2020, when we first popping out, with this COVID, you know, it was still a little slight, but you know, 2021, everybody popping out. We got the stimulus checks running, everybody popping, everybody traveling, everybody turned up. And then now I'm just looking and I don't see the same energy. I don't see the same, you know, flavor that everybody once had. Yeah. So now I'm thinking like, it's longevity what really matters.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you went hard for 2 years.
Yeah.
What about that third year? We looking like nobody knows you anymore.
I mean, I've seen some real life things. So, you know, look, you know, we like to flex a little bit, you know, so you can't just go to the club. Like, are you in the VIP? Do you got the tables? Are you buying a $50 bottle of Ciroc for $3.50? Right. So
I was about to say, okay.
500. Depends on where you're going. Right. So just think about those things and why you're doing it, because outside you would not go to the store and pay $500 for that bottle. Exactly. But you pay for it because you think, like you said, hey, for this night, I feel special. I feel like I'm the man, I'm the woman, people looking at me, like, here it is. You go home and nobody remember. You could walk past the same people tomorrow. They don't know who you are. But I've seen some examples of people with that long money, right, that really humbled me and said, like, why would I not emulate what they're doing? So all those things, man, is what I kind of root back to with, like, what do I really want? What I really want isn't for other people to think high of me or to see that I have money or whatever. I'm comfortable in my own skin, man. Like, I know what's in my bank account. Right? I
love that.
I don't need to show anybody else or have anybody else wanting to come get what's in my bank account, right? So it doesn't move me, man. What moves me is, you know, having the love of my wife, my kids, setting them up so that welfare is never a word that they experience, right? It's a word that they're familiar with and have empathy for, but they don't have to live through it like I did through my childhood, right? That's what moves me. So that's how I spin my wheels, man. I don't focus on any more, you know, tables and all this stuff. Me and my wife riding out to Thailand, like, low key. That's what I like doing, right? I don't need to post every move on Instagram or anything, but that's just me, man. That's just me.
It sure will, man. It sure will. And we want to get some, like, you know, not investment advice, but what are you specifically investing in? And can you tell us why, you know, during this period, so we can, you know, make our choice if we want to follow that or not? Because like I said, it's not investment advice.
Not investment advice, just what I do. So I'm a big holder in U.S. Equity, so stocks, right? So my principle is, like I said, what's the most effective way to get the most reward for the least amount of effort, right? So I'm big on, I mean, I'm not lazy. I just like to be a little bit smarter with how I consume my energy, right? So the biggest thing for me is I invest in, index funds. If you're not familiar with index funds, basically think of it as a bucket that has many, many different stocks inside of that bucket, right? So you can get a small bucket and you can have just tech companies in that index fund, right? You can get a bigger bucket, a bigger bucket that has every stock in the S&P 500, for instance, in that bucket. Get a little bit bigger bucket, every stock in the whole United States of America, right? Even bigger bucket, every stock in the whole entire world, right? Basically, right? So figure out what size bucket you want. I'd say you don't need to necessarily go, you know, the whole world, because the U.S. economy has been booming for at least the past 12 years. So if you're invested in internationally, you haven't made as much as if you would have been invested in just the U.S., right? So there's cycles to everything. But right now, I've been invested in basically the S&P 500 index funds. If anybody's looking up tickers, Vanguard's a big company. VOO is the ticker for their ETF fund. I forget the ticker for their mutual fund, but Google will tell you. And if you want easy, a target date fund is like set it and forget it, like autopilot, right? If you're young,
that's the best.
You basically buy one when, target funds, if you're not familiar, will be, they'll say target date fund and have a date at the end. So, maybe yours says, there might be one that says 2060. All that means is you think you'd retire in 2060, right? So if that's your age, you say, take your age, add 70 to it, and find the target fund that's closest to that date. So 2060, if you're born in 1990 kind of thing, right? And so what that does is it automatically invests for you. And as you're younger, you invest more in stocks. But as you get toward the tail end of your age in 2060, you invest more. It lowers the amount you invested in stocks, and you're investing more in bonds.
So we do that at a brokerage. We would go.
I'm sure a lot of people have them in their 401k plans as well. If you look at your menu of options, there'll be a slew of target date funds there. A lot of companies have made an automatic thing where you don't get to decide if you're going to participate in the fund, because when you give people that option, a lot of people just never do it, right? And then they have trouble later because they haven't invested for retirement. A lot of companies now are automatically enrolling you in. So, okay, you're born in 1990. You automatically go into the 2060 fund. You have to opt out, but you're already opted in.
Okay.
Right. So these funds are like very common. You'll see them in your workplace retirement plan, but you can get them on your own in your own brokerage. You can get them they're all over the place, right?
What's your favorite brokerage?
So I've had a bunch. My favorite one that I would say is Fidelity. So Vanguard and Fidelity, probably Charles Schwab is another big one. E-Trade is the big one. But I'd say Fidelity is, for me, in my opinion, probably the strongest one, just because of so they can do fractional shares in ETFs. At Vanguard, they still, at least to my knowledge, don't do fractional shares. And all that means is that you don't have to, again, say you want to buy Apple. You don't need to buy a whole share of Apple. You can just buy $10 worth of Apple, right? So that's what fractional shares is. You don't need the whole $180 to buy a whole share. You can just buy a piece. So Vanguard lets you do that with ETFs, stocks. I don't think Vanguard is all the way there with that flexibility. So that's one reason I'd say Fidelity. But also, Fidelity, Vanguard, all these will be able to handle your needs for the most part, right? So if you need to invest for yourself, they got you covered. If you need to invest for your kids in a college 529 fund, they got you too. If you need to invest in a UTMA account for your kid, they got you. So they'll all have the type of accounts you need: a Roth IRA, a traditional, like all those things are table stakes that you can open them all there. I just like Fidelity the most because there's a lot of free research that they kind of have as well. But nothing wrong with the other ones. Just my personal preference is Fidelity.
I love that. But we got one more question for you, big dog. I'm gonna read you two quotes, and I want to know, which one do you believe is more accurate? So the first quote is "more money, more problems," like Biggie, and the second quote is "money can't buy happiness." Which one do you believe is more accurate?
Both are accurate, but I'd say more accurate would be "money can't buy you happiness." Well, first I'll say why "more money, more problems" isn't the one I went with. So, more money, it's not more problems; it's different problems. Because if you don't have money, your problems are immediate in terms of, how am I going to feed my family? What happens if, something, I get hurt on my job, right? So your problems are there. When you get more money, I saw something this morning, Tom Brady. Anybody doesn't know who Tom Brady is? Famous quarterback, won 6 Super Bowls.
You don't even know this planet.
Tom Brady, right? But what he said recently in this article was that he worries that his kids won't have a normal life because basically they only know privilege. So he has all this money and he's like, I wish I could take them back to the house I grew up in, but I can't because I'm Tom Brady and my wife is Giselle. There's not enough security. We can't do that, right?
Wow.
So the problems are there, but the problems are different. He's not worried about, am I going to run out of money? It's how can I have a normal life for my kids, right? How do I got to worry about somebody trying to invade my property or come, do harm to my family, right? So it's not different problems. It's not more problems. It's different.
Yeah.
So the money can't buy you happiness thing, because there's just too many cases of people with money who just, unfortunately committing suicide, Robin Williams, right? And money can't buy you health. It can buy you better access to health care. But if you're not taking care of your body, the body and mind are all connected, right? So the happiness comes from, you can be rich and be on your eighth wife, or eighth husband, right? So a lot of things money can't buy, like how you connect with people, right? Your communication skills. A lot of this stuff happens in your upbringing. Like, did you learn these things long ago that you can transition them into how you can have a successful relationship with somebody as an adult, right? So all the money in the world, I mean, I don't know Elon Musk personally, dude's rich. He has a lot of, I don't know how happy he is, but he has he comes across as a very up and down emotional kind of guy sometimes, right? So some of the most peaceful people I've ever seen, at least in my encounter with them, is going to some of these areas. Like when I was in Colombia, people in this town called Palenque. So it was a town where African slaves had broken away and went to this part of Colombia outside of Cartagena. And I went there, man, and just dirt streets, it wasn't no towers and ATMs, but just the people just welcomed you and embraced you with like a true love. And I wasn't there to spend a lot of money. I came on like a little tour, but just the sense of contentment, right? And you would see sometimes, if you watch TV, you're like some remote part of the world, a kid just got a soccer ball, and you can't tell them that they're not happy, right? You come to our country, kids will have an iPad, a TV in their room, right? Different pairs of shoes and clothes, and they're like, I'm bored. They have no idea what to play with. And you're like, I'm bored. So the money can't buy you happiness, right? It has to come from within. You got to realize, appreciate every day you have, right? Appreciate the people around you, because as long as we think we all going to live, right, in a continuum of time, it's nothing but a little dot that you can barely see, man. So, that's why money can't buy you happiness, man. That's for sure.
Man. You killed it today. Let me put that out there. You killed it today, man. Thank you so much for dropping this very, very, very needed game, man. This much needed game. And just let everybody know where they can reach you. Let us know, any final gems
find
you
me
got.
On Work-Life Balance. Play on Work-Life Balance, but Worth-Life Balance on Instagram, man. If you're there, link in my bio to a couple resources. I post about simple ways to build wealth, right? I'm not going to talk about options, because I think a lot of people are not yet there. Do the basics, hit the singles. Let's get this money.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, man. Like I said, we really appreciate it. Everybody listening, make sure that y'all not just listening, but y'all actually applying this information, because that's what's going to bring those true results. Thank y'all again. Tap back in for another FinLit Friday, and I'm going to need everyone to stay safe.
Thank you all for listening to FYI FLI, the podcast, and we hope you enjoyed the show. Tune in next week for more financial literacy insights with our special guest. Please visit our website, social media platforms, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at FYI FLI Podcast. That's FYI FLI Podcast. See y'all next week, and stay fly.